Hello everyone, and welcome back. Before we get into tonight's stories, I'd love to know where you're watching from and what time it is where you are. Leave both in the comments below. I always enjoy seeing just how far these stories are traveling and who's listening from around the world. It also really helps support the channel and lets me know that you're enjoying these videos. Now, turn down the lights, get comfortable, and let's get into tonight's stories. I have been a retail manager for going on 3 years now, working for one of those mid-sized chains that everybody knows the name of but nobody really thinks about until they need something at 11 at night. Retail after the pandemic is rough, in a way people who have not worked it do not really understand. Corporate keeps cutting labor hours because online sales eat into the numbers every quarter, but the store still has to open at the same time and close at the same time, and get stocked the same way it always did, just with fewer people to do it. I got offered the management position about 2 years back. More money, more responsibility, and I took it because we needed the money badly enough that saying no was not really an option worth considering. The problem with the job is the commute. My store is almost an hour away from where we live, sometimes closer to 2 if traffic backs up on the interstate, which it does more often than it should for a stretch of road that far from any real city. I do not drive myself, have not for a little over 5 years now. I had a seizure while driving back when I was in my 20s. Nothing that ever repeated after that once I got on medication for it, but my doctor and the state both required a long stretch of being seizure-free before they would even consider giving my license back, and by the time I qualified, I had gone so long without driving that the idea of getting back behind the wheel honestly scared me more than the seizure itself had. So my wife drives me in every morning and picks me up every night, which is its own kind of strain on both of us, especially with our 6-year-old at home who does not fully understand why daddy cannot just drive like other dads do. Money has been tight for a long time now. We eat a lot of the same handful of cheap meals on rotation. Hot dogs more nights than I would like to admit. Ramen for breakfast some mornings when things get especially thin toward the end of a pay period. I do not mind it much for myself. What gets to me is watching my daughter's face fall a little every time she realizes it is hot dogs again, trying to be polite about it because she is a good kid, but you can see it land on her anyway. About 3 weeks before this happened, we got word that corporate was doing a walkthrough of our store. One of those big regional inspections that decide whether a store manager gets a good review or gets put on some kind of improvement plan. I put in a lot of extra hours getting the place ready, staying late most nights, coming in early most mornings, which meant my wife was making a lot more trips back and forth in the car than usual. Between the extra driving and the price of gas these days, our travel costs that month were higher than our entire electric bill, which is saying something. The car finally gave out on a Tuesday, about 10 days before the inspection was supposed to happen. Not something small either, not a flat tire you patch for $20 and move on. Something with the cooling fan for the engine, and something with the shifter mechanism that my wife tried to explain to me over the phone, though I will admit I do not know the first thing about cars and most of what she said went right past me. What I understood clearly enough was that it was not driving anywhere that day, and probably not for a while after that either, not without money we did not currently have sitting around. This all happened, of course, on a day I was scheduled to close the store. I was already an hour from home with no way to get back, and my bank account was sitting at negative $11, which meant even calling for a rideshare was not really an option. I had exactly $2 in cash in my wallet, which I remember because I actually pulled it out and counted it standing in the break room, like maybe it had multiplied since the last time I checked. I still had a store to close, so that is what I did. I worked the rest of my shift like normal, checked the registers, walked the floor, did the closing paperwork, all while trying to figure out on the side what I was actually going to do once the doors were locked and everyone else went home for the night. I called my wife during my one short break, and she told me she was trying to get a tow truck out to look at the car, But between the cost of the tow and whatever the actual repair was going to run us, it was not looking like something that was getting fixed that same night. Possibly not for a few days, depending on what the shop said once they got a look at it. By the time I had the store fully closed down, it was almost 11 at night. I said goodnight to my last two employees as they walked out to their cars, and I stood there in the parking lot after them, watching their headlights pull out onto the main road one at a time until the lot was empty except for my own absence of a car, sitting broken down a mile from my driveway with a dead fan and a busted shifter. I called my wife again once everyone was gone, and she still did not have great news. The tow truck situation had gotten complicated, something about the shop she usually used being backed up and not able to get to it until the morning. And even then, she was not sure how she was supposed to get out to me in the meantime with our own car out of commission and our daughter already asleep at home. I told her not to worry about it, that I would figure something out, mostly because I did not want her driving around at midnight trying to solve a problem that already felt unsolvable from where I was standing. So I stood outside the store, working my phone, trying to think through every option I had. Calling a friend felt embarrassing at nearly midnight, though I went through my contacts twice trying to talk myself into it. The buses in that area stopped running hours earlier. Not that I had bus fare with $2 in my pocket anyway. I thought about just walking, which is a genuinely stupid idea when you are talking about an hour drive turned into what would have been something like 5 or 6 hours on foot, most of it along an unlit stretch of highway with no real shoulder to speak of. The parking lot lights on a timer shut off around midnight, leaving just the security lighting directly above the store's entrance and the glow from a gas station sign about a quarter mile down the road, which was the only other light source in any direction. I ended up sitting down on the curb near the front doors, phone in hand, going back and forth in my head about what to actually do, when I noticed a car pull into the far end of the lot, slow, and just sit there with its headlights on, aimed roughly in my direction from a good distance away. I did not think much of it at first. People pulled into that lot at odd hours sometimes, turning around, checking a phone, whatever. But it did not leave. It just sat there, engine running from what I could tell by the exhaust visible under the security lighting, headlights still on, not moving any closer and not pulling back out onto the road either. I watched it for a solid 5 minutes, maybe longer, waiting for it to do something, anything, that would explain what it was doing sitting in an empty lot at that hour facing an equally empty part of the building. Eventually the headlights cut off, though the car did not leave. I could just barely make out the shape of it sitting there in the dark now, engine still running based on a faint sound I could hear across the lot when the wind was right. I stood up off the curb at that point, mostly out of instinct, moving closer to the actual doors of the store, which were locked, but at least gave me something solid at my back rather than standing exposed in the open with nothing around me. I called my wife a third time, keeping my voice as level as I could so I would not worry her more than she already was, and told her there was a car sitting in the lot that had been there a while without doing anything, and could she maybe just stay on the phone with me for a bit while I waited to see what happened. She agreed right away, no hesitation, and having her voice in my ear helped more than I expected it to, even though neither of us really had a plan beyond just waiting it out together over the phone. The car sat there for close to 20 more minutes without moving, without anyone getting out, without anything happening that I could point to as an actual event. Then, just as suddenly as it had shown up, the headlights came back on, it pulled out of the lot, and drove off in the opposite direction from where I was standing, tail lights disappearing down the road within a few seconds. I stood there another minute just to be sure it was not coming back around, and when it did not, I finally let out a breath I did not fully realize I had been holding the whole time. I ended up calling one of my closing employees back, a coworker who did not live too far from the store, and asked if there was any chance he could swing back and give me a ride partway home, at least to somewhere I could figure out the rest from there. He said he could, no real hesitation, and showed up about 15 minutes later, apologizing the whole drive for not just staying to give me a ride in the first place, which was not something either of us had thought to arrange before he left originally. I got home a lot later than I expected that night. Car problems still unresolved, bank account still sitting in the negative, but at least back safe with my family instead of standing in that lot. My wife and I talked about the car in the parking lot a little that night before finally getting some sleep. Both of us agreeing it was probably nothing. Some late shift worker from a nearby business turning around, or someone lost trying to find an address. Nothing that needed more thought than that. But I still think about it sometimes, mostly on nights I am scheduled to close alone again, wondering what exactly that car was doing sitting there in the dark for 20 minutes with its lights off, facing a locked store with nobody visibly inside it, before finally just driving away without ever approaching me at all. I want to start by saying I have never been the type of person who scares easily, which is probably why I ended up doing something as reckless as I did that night. I was driving home from visiting my sister a few states over, taking one of those long rural highways that cuts through miles of nothing but farmland and forest, the kind of road where you can go 20 minutes without seeing another set of headlights. It was mid-June, late enough at night that the temperature had dropped into something almost pleasant after a hot day, windows cracked just enough to let the air in. About 3 hours into the drive, my car started making a sound I did not like, a kind of grinding that got worse the longer I ignored it, until finally the whole thing just lost power on a stretch of road with nothing around for miles in either direction. No cell signal to speak of, not even one bar flickering in and out. I coasted onto the shoulder, put my hazards on, and sat there for a minute just trying to process the fact that I was now genuinely stranded. No idea how far the nearest town was. No way to call anyone even if I did know. I got out to pop the hood, more out of habit than any real expectation that I would know what I was looking at, since I do not know the first thing about cars beyond checking the oil. While I stood there staring uselessly at the engine, something caught my eye further down the road, maybe 100 yards ahead, just visible in the moonlight. A car, off the road, tipped onto its side in a ditch. I remember thinking that was strange, since I had not passed any other cars in a long time, and there was no way I would have missed a wreck like that if I had driven by it earlier. I left my own car where it was and walked down to get a closer look, mostly out of curiosity, and partly because if there was another driver stranded nearby, maybe we could figure something out together. The wreck looked recent, no rust anywhere on it, doors caved in, every window shattered. It did not look like it had been sitting there for years the way abandoned cars sometimes do out in the country. I approached carefully, half expecting to find someone still inside, hurt or worse, and I will admit I took a breath before I actually opened the door, trying to prepare myself for whatever I might see. It was empty. No one inside, no blood, nothing that suggested where the driver might have gone. I stood there for a second feeling an odd mix of relief and unease, since an empty wrecked car on an empty road raises more questions than it answers. I straightened up and started walking back toward my own car, and that is when I noticed how quiet everything had gotten. Not just quiet the way a rural road is quiet at night, but completely silent in a way that felt wrong the longer I stood there paying attention to it. No crickets, no wind moving through the leaves, even though I could see the treetops swaying slightly along the tree line bordering the road. No birds, no bugs, nothing. I actually stopped walking at one point just to listen, and I could not even hear my own footsteps clearly on the gravel shoulder, like the sound was being swallowed somewhere before it reached my ears. Underneath that unnatural quiet, there was another sound, faint at first, coming from somewhere in the trees. It is hard to describe exactly what it sounded like. The closest I can get is that it sounded like breathing, slow and deep, the kind of sound you would expect from something very large taking very long breaths. I know exactly how foolish this next part sounds, but I want to be honest about what actually happened rather than cleaning it up to make myself look smarter than I acted that night. Instead of getting back in whatever was left of my situation and calling it a night, waiting for a car to pass or trying to walk toward wherever the nearest lights might be, I found myself walking toward the tree line instead, pulled along by that sound and by the strange stillness of everything around me. I stepped into the woods. It was dark enough under the canopy that I could barely see more than a few feet ahead, just occasional patches of moonlight breaking through where the branches thinned out. I tried to keep myself walking in a straight line, telling myself I would just look for a minute and then turn right back around, but a minute turned into longer than I meant to be in there. The breathing sound got louder the deeper I went, until it felt like it was coming from all directions at once, rather than any single source I could point to. I started feeling like I was being watched, that specific kind of dread that settles into your chest before your brain has even fully processed what triggered it. I stopped walking and made myself think clearly for a second. A forest does not breathe. I told myself I was exhausted, running on almost no sleep, probably dehydrated after hours on the road, and that my mind was doing what tired minds do when left alone in the dark for too long. I decided right then to turn around and get back to the road, annoyed at myself for wandering into a forest at night over nothing more than a strange sound and an empty car. When I turned around, someone was standing directly in front of me, close enough that we were nearly touching. It was a woman, though I use that word loosely now looking back on it. She was not wearing any clothes, her hair matted and tangled, her eyes far too wide, pupils blown out huge, even accounting for how dark it was. She looked starved, her skin stretched tight in places it should not have been. I could not move. My whole body just locked up, heart going harder than I have ever felt it go, legs feeling like they might give out under me entirely. She raised one hand slowly and pressed a finger to her lips, and I understood immediately she was telling me to be quiet. Her mouth was slightly open, and what teeth she had were broken and discolored, and I noticed, in whatever part of my brain was still functioning enough to notice details, that she did not appear to have a tongue. Whatever had frozen me in place broke all at once, and I turned and ran, no real direction to it, just moving as fast and as hard as I could away from her, branches catching my arms and face the whole way without me caring enough to try dodging them. I looked back once, only once, and she was standing in the exact same spot, not chasing me, just watching. Her body bent at an angle that did not look right for how a person's spine should curve, fingers still pressed against her lips. I do not know how long it actually took me to get back to the road. It felt like both no time at all and much longer than it should have been. When I finally broke out of the tree line, my own broken down car was sitting right where I left it, and somehow the sight of that useless dead vehicle was the most comforting thing I had seen in my life. I climbed inside, locked the doors out of pure instinct even though the car was not going anywhere, and just sat there shaking, crying without fully meaning to, adrenaline draining out of me all at once. Eventually, once my hands had steadied enough, I tried the engine again, and this time it turned over, whatever had been wrong with it apparently deciding to work again just long enough to get me away from there. I did not stop driving until I hit a gas station with actual lights on, over half an hour later, where I sat in the parking lot for a long while before I trusted myself to go inside and ask for help. It was not until much later, once I was safely home and had time to actually think through everything that happened, that a detail settled into place that I had not let myself consider in the moment. There had been no animal sounds anywhere near that stretch of forest, not one, the entire time I was out there. No birds, no insects, nothing that should have been present in woods like that on a summer night. Whatever was living in there, if you could even call it living, had likely driven out anything natural a long time before I ever showed up. I have thought about that woman on different occasions since that night, turning it over from every angle I can think of. She never moved toward me. She never made a sound the entire time she stood there, not once, despite whatever unnatural thing must have been living alongside her in those trees. All she did was raise a finger to her lips and stare, and the longer I sit with it, the more I have come to believe she was not trying to hurt me at all. I think she was trying to warn me to stay quiet and to leave before whatever else was out there breathing in the dark noticed I had ever been there in the first place. My fuel gauge has been broken for about 2 months now, ever since I backed into a shopping cart corral in a parking lot last spring and did more damage to the front end than I realized at the time. It looked like nothing more than a scraped bumper when it happened, and I honestly did not think twice about it. Paid the $70 deductible, figured that was the end of it. What I did not know until about 3 weeks later was that whatever wiring runs from the fuel sensor to the dashboard had gotten pinched or knocked loose somewhere in that collision, because my gauge started sitting frozen at just under a quarter tank, no matter what I did, whether I had just filled up completely or was actually running close to empty. The mechanic I brought it to quoted me almost $400 to trace the wiring and fix it properly, which was money I did not have lying around at the time. So I told myself I would just keep track of my mileage manually until I could afford the repair. That plan worked fine for a while. I kept a little note in my phone, tracking roughly how many miles I had driven since my last fill-up, filling the tank every time I hit somewhere around 250 miles just to stay safe. It became routine enough that I stopped thinking about it as a workaround and started treating it like it was just how my car worked now. The problem is that routines fall apart the second your regular schedule does, and mine fell apart hard that particular week. My mother had a minor surgery that landed me driving back and forth to a hospital 40 minutes outside my normal routine for 3 straight days, on top of my regular job, on top of picking my kids up from 2 different practices some evenings, because my husband was working late covering for someone. Somewhere in the middle of all that extra driving, I lost track of my mileage note completely. I genuinely could not have told you if you had asked me that night when I had last put gas in that car. I was driving home from the hospital around 11 at night after visiting hours ended, taking the interstate the way I always did on the nights I made that drive, tired in that specific way, where your body is running mostly on autopilot, and your brain has stopped double-checking anything it does not absolutely have to. There is a long hill, about 2/3 of the way through that drive. Nothing dramatic, just a steady incline running close to a mile before it levels back out, the kind of stretch where you naturally give the car a little more gas without thinking about it to hold your speed climbing up. I was about halfway up that hill when the engine started losing power, sputtering in a way that took me a second to even register as something wrong rather than some minor road noise. By the time it actually clicked in my head what was happening, the car had already slowed enough that gravity was starting to win the fight, engine coughing weakly a couple more times before it cut out completely. I coasted, losing speed fast on that incline, and managed to angle the car onto the narrow shoulder before it rolled to a full stop. Hazards the only thing I had the presence of mind to hit before my hands started shaking on the wheel. I sat there a second just absorbing it, out of gas, on a steep shoulder, on an interstate hill in the middle of the night. My car tilted at an angle that made my stomach turn a little every time I glanced at my side mirror and saw how far the ground dropped away past the guardrail on the other side of the lanes. The shoulder itself was barely wide enough to fit my car fully off the traffic lane, and every so often a set of headlights would crest the hill behind me and sweep across my back windshield before passing, most of them not slowing at all, 1 or 2 easing off the gas slightly before deciding I was fine and speeding back up. I called for a tow, gave the dispatcher my mile marker as best I could estimate it in the dark, and was told the wait would run somewhere around 45 minutes, given how far out I was and how backed up they were that night. 45 minutes does not sound like much until you are sitting alone on the shoulder of a dark hill with your hazards blinking and absolutely nothing to do but watch the road behind you in your mirror. About 10 minutes into that wait, I noticed headlights had stopped on the shoulder behind me, maybe 30 or 40 yards back, hazards flashing the same rhythm as mine. My first thought was that maybe someone else had broken down, which honestly did not seem unreasonable. Engines strain harder going uphill, and it would not be the first time two cars gave out on the same stretch in one night. I watched in my mirror for a minute, expecting a door to open, a hood to pop, something that would explain it. Nothing happened. The car just sat there, hazards blinking, no exhaust visible in the cold air behind it that I could make out, no headlights other than the hazards themselves. I told myself it was nothing, went back to my phone, checked the tow tracking app even though it had not updated since I first called. Every few minutes I found myself glancing back up at that mirror anyway, something about the stillness of it pulling my attention whether I wanted it to or not. The car never moved. No one got out. No dome light flicked on the way it would if someone were digging through a glove box or grabbing a flashlight from under a seat. Somewhere around the 20-minute mark, I realized the gap between us looked smaller than it had the last time I'd checked. I could not tell you exactly by how much, since I had not been watching it every single second, but it was close enough now that I could make out the general shape of the vehicle a little more clearly than before. A sedan, dark-colored, sitting at an angle on the shoulder that did not look quite right, tilted more sharply than the slope of the ground should have accounted for. My stomach dropped a little at that, and I checked my locks even though I already knew they were locked, and checked my phone signal to make sure I still had bars in case I needed to call someone besides a tow truck. I told myself there were a dozen normal explanations. Maybe the driver had rolled forward a little, trying to find better footing on the narrow shoulder. Maybe distance is just hard to judge at night with nothing but headlights from passing traffic to measure by. But every time I looked back over the next several minutes, the gap kept looking smaller than it had the last time, and I never once saw it actually move, never heard an engine turn over, nothing. I called the tow company back, mostly just to have a voice on the line, asked how much longer it might be even though I had just checked 10 minutes earlier and knew the answer would not have changed much. The dispatcher told me another 20 minutes or so, apologized for the wait, and I kept her talking a little longer than I probably needed to about nothing in particular, my eyes bouncing between the windshield and the mirror the whole time. When another car finally did crest the hill and pass both of us, I watched closely to see what its headlights would show me as they swept over that other vehicle. For just a second, in that better light, I got a clearer look at it than I had all night, and something about the angle it sat at looked wrong in a way I could not fully explain. Tilted more than the shoulder itself would cause, almost like it was leaning against something rather than resting flat on solid ground. The passing car's headlights moved on, sweeping briefly across my own vehicle before continuing up and over the hill, taillights shrinking away into the dark. In that same brief window of light, I thought I caught movement inside the other car, low down near the driver's side, though it happened fast enough that I genuinely cannot swear to what I actually saw versus what my tired mind filled in on its own after everything else that night. I sat there after that, not moving at all, both hands on the wheel even though the engine was off and there was nowhere for me to go, just watching that mirror the way you watch something you are afraid to look away from. My phone was still in my lap. The tow tracking app refreshed once, showing the driver was closer now, and I remember staring at that little moving dot on the screen like it was the only real thing left in the world at that moment. The tow truck's amber lights finally appeared cresting the hill about 15 minutes later, and I have never in my life been so relieved to see a set of flashing lights heading toward me. The driver pulled up ahead of my car, got out, and we went through the process of him grabbing a gas can from his truck bed while I stood near my open door, unable to stop myself from glancing back down the shoulder every few seconds toward where that other car had been sitting. It was not there anymore. I had not seen it leave. I had not heard an engine, had not seen headlights pull back into traffic at any point while I was watching, and yet somewhere in the short stretch of minutes I had spent focused on the tow driver and the gas can, it had simply stopped being there. I asked him, trying to keep my voice casual, if he had passed another broken-down car anywhere on his way up the hill. He said no, that the shoulder had been completely clear the whole way. Nothing stopped between the bottom of the hill and where I was parked. He got my car running again about 10 minutes later, and I thanked him more than the situation probably called for, tipped him everything I had in cash in my wallet even though he told me it was not necessary. I drove the rest of the way home slower than usual, checking my mirrors on that stretch far more than the situation required, and I did not really relax until I pulled into my own driveway and saw the porch light on, my husband still up waiting for an update on my mother. I got the fuel gauge fixed the following week, first thing, paid the $400 without a second thought about the money this time. I have not let that tank run below half since, and I make a point now of driving straight through to the next exit on that particular stretch of interstate, rather than ever stopping along that hill again, even for something as small as checking a text. I still do not know what that car actually was, why it seemed to sit closer each time I checked without ever appearing to move, or where exactly it went in that narrow window between the tow truck's arrival and me finally getting back on the road. What I do know is that I have never once seen another broken-down vehicle on that hill since, not in the 2 years I have driven that route regularly, and some nights, when I have to take that drive home late enough that the road empties out the same way it did that night, I find myself watching my mirrors a little longer than I probably need to, just checking, even though I already know there is nothing back there anymore.